The Romantic poetry can be long and sprawling, full of nature and contemplation. They're the complete opposite of the sonnet, even though the Romantics did use the sonnet, which is so compact, like a little room, that those two forms seem to be at odds, and yet they define our understanding of poetry. One long and the other very short. So let's look at that long form. The long Romantic poem is not inspired by Petrarch's canzone, as you would think, like in previous generations of long poetry, but instead by the Greek odes written by Pindar. We call them Pindaric odes. They were originally ceremonial poems written in order to praise a person. Eventually, it evolved into poems of praise with great meditation and feeling, as can be seen with the Romantics. Now, these sprawling poems, full of an avalanche of ideas and complex stanzas and mixed meters, are actually quite structured. For example, if you look at Pindar's public or ceremonial poems, usually of athletes, they're in a variety of mixed stanzas called triads. Now, each triad is made up of 3 stanzas, and you can have as many triads as you wish. Pindar's famous Olympian ode number 1 has 4 triads. That means 4 sets of 3 stanzas for a total of 12 stanzas. Oh my God, how did it turn around? Now, Horace, famous Ode 4.1, and Horace was Rome's greatest practitioner of the ode, has 15 stanzas, if you count them. So how many triads is that? That's 5. Each triad is broken up into a set of form and functions. Formally, the first 2 stanzas of a triad have the same stanza length and meters, while the 3rd stanza of the triad is always different. So in Pindar's case, the first 2 stanzas in the Olympic ode, number 1, have 11 lines. But the 3rd stanza has 9. Now, Horace doesn't follow this rule. Number 6, just looking, for example, at the very first stanza of Pindar's poem, you can see how each line is of a different length. This is an example of mixed meter, and this design will be found in the first 2 stanzas, and then the 3rd stanza will be different. As a function, the first stanza of the triad is called a strophe, or turn. The 2nd stanza is called an antistrophe, or counterturn, and the 3rd stanza is called an epode, or stand. So each triad is made up of a strophe, an antistrophe, and an epode. These are 2 stanzas, the opening stanzas, the first triad. I've marked it as strophe, put 1 to associate with the triad, antistrophe 1 also associated with the triad, and then we have the epode for the first triad, which then immediately starts the strophe of the 2nd triad, which is followed by the antistrophe of the 2nd triad, to the epode of the 2nd triad, leads to the strophe of the 3rd triad, to the antistrophe of the 3rd triad, to the epode of the 3rd triad, etc. Notice as well William Collins' Ode to the Poetical Character, his tribute to Spenser and Milton. There, he includes those very functions as terms or vocabulary in the poem. The poem opens with a strophe, and then the second part of the triad of this huge ode is an epode, the standing, and then it ends with antistrophe, because he's talking about poetry that's impossible to replicate. When he says, from Waller's myrtle shades retreating from the realm of easy love poetry, as represented by Waller, with many a vow from hope's aspiring tongue, my trembling feet his guiding steps pursue. He is going to follow the poetry of Milton, and of course, that is a difficult endeavor. The idea is that the triad makes up a full movement of an idea. And again, we're back to idea-driven poetry. The strophe represents an idea that is then contradicted or put into play by the antistrophe, which is then resolved in the epode, or stand, before moving on to the next triad, with its own ideas, counter ideas, and stand, until the poem is done. The ode always ends on a stand or epode. There has to be some resolution to the ideas being explored. It's not the sonnet, which can end on irresolution or contradiction. Here, there's always some sort of resolution. The ode moves forward through contradictions and resolutions, and it ends in resolutions. Even if later versions do not follow the strophe, antistrophe, epode structure perfectly. One feature of the genre, as celebrated by Horace and Cowley, is its flood of ideas. When you first read Pindar, you're probably totally confused. Like, what's happening? Who are all these gods and stories about this guy named Pelops? What happened to the Kentucky Derby winning horse jockey, the victorious athlete Huron, the guy who won the horse race? Where did he go in the poem? And why does Pindar open and close his ode on his poetry and his poetic abilities, as if he's in competition with the athlete that he's praising? Well, it's because the ode is always about poetry. And if my heart you wish to sing of prizes won in games of strength, seek no radiant start whose beams have keener power to warm in all the wastes of upper air than the sun's beams, nor let us sing a place of games that surpass the Olympics. Look at the epode in the fourth triad, like, my muse is tempering her strong-winged dart for me. Do not look to climb any further. And may I be the friend of winners in the games, winning honor for my art among Greeks everywhere? Finally, and then in the antistrophe to the first triad, Huron, the winner, the athlete, also a tyrant of Syracuse, he is associated with poetry too, and he delights in the flair of music, the brightness of poetry and music, at which we poets often vie in friendly company around his table. So take down from its peg your Dorian lyre. This is what Cowley said in 1659 about Pindar. And it's incredible that people don't read Cowley as much as they should, and he's not even included in anthologies. It makes no sense. The ode, according to the constant custom of the poet, and he's talking about Pindar, consists more in digressions than in the main subject. And the reader must not be shocked to hear him speak so often of his own muse, for that is a liberty which this kind of poetry can hardly live without. The liberty he refers to is the poetic license given to a poet. This liberty is likewise seen as a force of nature. Look at Horace's description of this kind of poetry in his Ode 4.1, where he warns a fellow poet, looking at the end of the first triad, the antistrophe and the epode, the first one, like a river rushing down from the mountains that the rain has filled, spilling over its banks, so Pindar's deep voice rages immeasurably, beyond measurement, beyond measure, and goes on flowing. Pindar, deserving Apollo's laurel crown because he's so great. Whether he coins new phrases and audacious dithyramb, that's in Greek-Latin meter, and is carried along in meters free and unruly. Looking at Cowley's own translation, notice how it begins, describing Pindar. This is Cowley's translation of Horace. He's the guy who really makes free verse possible. Pindar's unnavigable song, like a swollen flood from some steep mountain pours along. The ocean meets with such a voice from his enlarged mouth as drowns the ocean noise. It's wild poetry. You're in danger of drowning. Look at Cowley's own ode about the resurrection, where he tries to describe spiritual music of the apocalypse with his own verse. He becomes excited. Feels wild, even though it has rhyme couplets to hold it in, but you can see all the variety of short lines and long lines. For example, stop, stop, my muse. But if slowed down, it could be spondy, right? Notice also, you'll just hear this foot kindled at a hint. Here's our first example of trisyllabic foot, and it's an anapest, weak, weak, strong. And then, of course, you also have trochees, hold thy. Everything is put to forceful use to describe Pindar's poetry like an uncontrollable horse. Stop, stop, my muse, allay thy vigorous heat, kindled at a hint so great. Hold thy Pindaresque Pegasus closely in, which does to rage begin. Why is this poetry not better known? Why is it not in the Norn Anthology? He has to hold his horse, control them. These horses inspired by Pindar's Olympian ode, right? If not, but flings writer and reader too, that sits not sure. Maybe Norton doesn't include it because it doesn't fit any model. We're always being thrown by Cowley's poetry. Cowley is taking Horace at his word. The ode is free and unruly. When looking at Cowley's stanzas, what do you see? Just looking at the first two stanzas, they're so different in their designs. This is where free verse is coming from. This is the origins of modern poetry. No wonder it flings you if you don't sit on it so surely. There's great variety. The triad is lost here, but the four stanzas usher in a new conception of the ode, the irregular ode. Anything can happen formally. And Cowley's irregular odes become the blueprint for exploring a flood of ideas that find its culmination in the Romantics.
Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell.